This is Lucid Totality. I'm Leah Wald and I'm here with Tyler Jenks. And this morning we're going to discuss Tyler's tweet, which said that this could be a bottom, but not to get too excited yet. And as well as discuss what Hyperwave Theory is saying about this particular bottom. So, Tyler?
Great, thank you very much, Leah. Exciting day. Basically, the downside targets that a number of analysts had been talking about, including ourselves, between the 7,000 and the 8,000 level was breached this morning. And I did send out a tweet just saying that this could be a bottom and possibly the bottom, and that's what we want to talk about today. It's got many of the characteristics of a bottom. The correction has been going on since December the 16th. It has been very deep, well over 50%, close to 60%, depending on what exchanges everyone's looking at. The technique that we've been using called Hyperwave, we are going to take a quick look at that. And I'm going to make a couple of comments that I have not before in terms of what this bottom might be in terms of Hyperwave. So we're going to go right to screen share. And we should be looking at the hyperwave type of movement on Bitcoin from all the way back at $500. And I'm going to just quickly put up the chart of hyperwave in terms of these 7 phases that it goes through, because today particularly we have to be very clear on what this archetype is saying and what it is not saying about the price of Bitcoin. This looks as if we have had a flat phase 1, a movement up in phase 2, an acceleration into phase 3, and an acceleration into phase 4. Let's take a look again. A flat beginning, an acceleration into phase 2, an acceleration into phase 3, and a final move up to through phase 4 before a very large correction that takes us all the way back below the beginning point of phase 4. The question then is that what we're looking at here? It certainly looks like it. It looks like this was a phase 4 move up that basically went from 500 to 20,000, or a 40x move, before a very big drop in phase 5, which would then mean phase 6 is beginning if what we saw this morning was this bottom. That is one interpretation, and there is a possibility that that is what is going on. We won't know that, but I will tell you I don't believe that's where we are with Bitcoin. I think what we are actually doing is we are simply retesting this phase 3 line. And I gave numbers yesterday saying that if we could hold above 6,700, we would still be in this phase 3 move up, which means we haven't even started phase 4 yet. That is my preferable interpretation of hyperwave at this point. And as I said yesterday, what we will do is day by day, week by week, month by month, we will follow the price action, and I will be able to define much more clearly exactly where we are. I will say one other thing about hyperwaves before we look at a couple of other examples. Phase 6 in a hyperwave never gets back up to the top, ever, not once. All the examples I've shown you over the last couple of weeks show that. And I will bring another one up right now, which is Columbia Gas and Electric. And you can see, just as we were looking at the model, the archetype, after a flat period, which is off to the left of the screen, we go up into the first angle, the second angle, the third angle, straight up, all the way back down. And then you have this big move up in phase 6, and phase 6 does not ever get back up to the top. So one of the big clues we are going to be looking at over the coming weeks and months is the ability for Bitcoin to get back up to its highs at 20,000. As soon as that occurs, you know you are not in a phase 6, no matter what the other evidence shows, and you're going much, much higher. So that's Columbia Gas and Electric back from 1924 to 1935, a perfect hyperwave. What's dangerous about a hyperwave and not being able to tell if you're in phase 5 or 6 is what happens when you start phase 7 and you go all the way back down to the beginning of where the hyperwave started. I'll show you one other very quickly, make this a little larger because this is hard to believe. I didn't when I saw it. This is International Business Machines, IBM. I didn't even know there was an IBM back in 1924-25. Certainly not the same company it is today, but it is the progenitor of International Business Machines today. But this is a very strong hyperwave, starting it down close to $25 and running up to 250 at 10x. This is the drop, which is the phase 5 drop. This is the move back up, phase 6. Does not get back up to the top, never does, and then all the way back down to its beginning point. So we've shown you a number of these from the 1920s. We've shown you a number of them from the 1970s. We're going to take a long look at the Japanese stock market in the 1970s and 80s. We've looked at the NASDAQ from 1995 through 2017. And now we are concentrating on Bitcoin. So I mentioned in my tweet that we could have a bottom this morning. Remember, we were looking for around 7,000 to 8,000. We hit 7,625 on Bitstamp this morning. We've now gone back over 9,000. Clearly, anybody would look at this chart and say, well, that is a bottom. What we don't know, is it the bottom? And one way we can look at this, I've noticed a couple of other analysts making the comment that a bottom in a market like this is not an event. It's not a point in time. It's a process that begins with this kind of activity, with a sharp drop down to 76.25, a reversal, and then a positive candle coming out of it with a fairly long wick on at the bottom, just as you look for a fairly long wick on a reversal at the top. So all of those elements are there. Number one, we've hit the target we've been looking for ever since 15,000. Kept saying it's going lower, be patient, it's going lower. At 12,000, be patient. At 11,100, we said, this is a line in the sand, not 10,000, but 11,100. And when we broke that sharply here, we began the downtrend in earnest. We said it's too early, be patient. Broke through 10,000, be patient. 9,000, 8,000, 7,000. Finally, we got down to the target. There is nothing magical about these targets. They come from a number of different sources, like large head and shoulders tops, measured moves, speed resistance lines, just a number of ways that you can get a target like this. We've talked about a couple of them. I'm going to just spend 5 minutes going quickly through why this might not yet be considered the bottom before we start a significant move back up to higher highs. Number one, remember yesterday, those that were watching, we looked at a thing that is called the stop and reverse point. I'm putting it up now on a short-term chart, 30-minute chart, and notice that the downtrend that we had been in was penetrated down at the bottom this morning, that gave us these new 5 circles, which are support now, and they will begin moving up. So on a very short-term time basis, we clearly are getting a bounce. Everybody knows that. But let's go a little bit longer. Here's the 1 hour. The 1 hour, as we were starting this vlog, just broke up through the resistance stop and reverse point. So we've got our first circle at the bottom showing support and indicating an uptrend. So the 30-minute is in an uptrend. The 1 hour is in an uptrend. But as we go further, the 2 hour has also just given us 2 circles at the bottom. It is in an uptrend. The 4 hour has not yet reached where it needs to go to indicate that the little bit longer term is still in a downtrend. We've got to get above 9,500 before that will be clear. That's why whoever indicated that this kind of a bottom is not an event, it is a process. We're now going through what you need to look at in terms of when does this process give you enough evidence that this is a significant bottom. It could go a lot higher. Well, when we look at the 6 hour chart, you'll notice that it also has given a buy signal. The 4 hour did not, but the 6 hour has, and that has a lot to do with the construction of what it took to get down to the low. That's a good sign. The 12 hour is far, far away from giving a buy signal. It's got to get up close to 11,000. And as we go into the daily chart, we've got to get back to 11,000. The 3-day chart, we've got to get up over 16,000. And the weekly, we've only got 3 negative periods, and we've got to get up to 17,000 or 17,500. So just in terms of this one indicator, which is a very powerful tool for telling you if a long-term trend or simply a short-term trend has taken place, the indication is we've got plenty of evidence that we've got a short-term bottom. It might even be an intermediate-term bottom that could last for several days, but we do not have the evidence yet of anything greater. I'm going to add just one other thing, which are the MACDs. The same kind of analysis can be used here over various time frames. Now, down at the bottom, the short-term average has crossed above the long-term. That's why we have green bars on the moving average convergence divergence, the MACD, and that would be considered a short-term buy signal. On the 1 hour, I have just now crossed in the last hour and a half to the upside, 2 green bars. So let's say on the 1 hour, we've got more indication that this is more than just a very short-term bounce. We have not yet given that signal on the 2 hour, but it's getting very close, and so on. The 4 hour is quite far away still, the 6 hour, and any kind of a technical tool that is measuring momentum will give you the same range from long-term to short-term. So with that very quick overview, I think everybody can finally feel a little bit more relieved that we are coming close to what could be a significant bottom. For those that dollar cost average or layer into positions, this would be a day to begin that process, depending on exactly what your risk tolerance is. I said yesterday, trying to catch a bottom or a falling knife is very difficult, if not impossible. And when you do it, it's luck. It isn't skill. You do it try it 5 times in a row, you're going to get cut 4 times. But other than that, my tweet that said, it looks like we have hit our targets. We, after having hit the target, immediately started a sharp reversal. That reversal looks good. It looks good out to about a 4-hour candle right now. And the higher we get, the more powerful this is going to look. Do not be surprised to find a pullback in the price at some point as it's breaking through this overhead resistance a little at a time. And there are other tools that can be used to time those kind of moves. What we're talking about is the major move. And going back to what I said about Hyperwave, what Hyperwave is saying right now is this is possibly only the shift from the phase 5 down up into a phase 6 bounce that will not get back to 20,000. If I had to put probabilities on that, it would be slightly less than 50-50 because the move up has been so powerful that it could be the end of this particular hyperwave. I am leaning towards saying that that is not what we're looking at, that we are going to work our way back up to 20,000. And when we do, we can draw in the phase 3 line at a slightly different angle and prepare ourselves for a monster move up on the phase 4 line. And we will follow that very closely from now on these logs where we actually are. And with all of that, have a great day, and back to Leah.
Thank you everyone for watching, and until next time.